It's one of the scariest stories I've ever read. People are creeps and weirdos, and the thought of somebody hiding in my house terrifies me. This happened in the 1980s to a family called the Bowen family that consisted of their dad, Frank, Tina, and Karen, who were his teenage daughters. And this happened in a place called, I think it's called Pepperell in Massachusetts. Massachusetts, I can't say that word. Anyway, this family, really normal, living a suburban life, and they've lived in their house since the girls were born, right? All of a sudden, the family thinks that their house is haunted. Things are going missing, they're hearing footsteps, doors are left open, the TV's randomly turning channel, they keep on getting spook phone calls, like it's giving haunted house. But they've never experienced anything before, so why all of a sudden is their house haunted? Well, at the time, the family didn't know this, but they actually had an unexpected visitor. And this visitor was called Daniel, and he had an obsession with Frank's teenage daughter, Tina. But Daniel was 17 years old and decided that he wanted to get up close and personal to Tina and move on in with the family. He did this in the creepiest way possible. You know, instead of like getting to know the dad and the sister, and just asking Tina out, he thought, I'm going to live in the walls. So this guy lived in the walls. He would come down and he would finish whole cartons of milk, help himself to the food. The family at the time thought, we've got a hungry ghost. He would take showers and he would take dumps in the toilet and not flush. It was fucking 1 you know? Also, what this guy did was he was flicking over the TV channel. So this guy bought a universal remote, which I didn't know existed in the 80s. But whenever the family wanted to watch their TV, he was like, no, we're watching this, pals. Honestly, weirdos. But then Frank started to think, yeah, this isn't a ghost. But he didn't want to tell the girls because he wasn't entirely sure. But he noticed that there was messages that started to appear. Sometimes it was on paper, sometimes it was on walls and in the mirror, and it was written in ketchup. These messages were, come find me, marry me, Tina, you look so beautiful. Frank started checking his house, he could never see anything, so he thought that somebody was coming round the house while they were out and pranking. He even called the police and says, I think somebody's pranking me, and the police went, well, it's just pranks. He never in a million years thought that some creep was living in the walls of his house. Daniel had also started piercing holes in Tina and Karen's bedroom ceilings so he could peep on them. When things took quite a dark turn, and in my opinion a terrifying turn. It was December and Frank had picked up his 2 teenage daughters from school and had also brought home one of Tina's friends, Kathleen. When they entered the house, the TV was on, radios were blaring, doors and cupboard doors were open, the shower was on, there was a little gift left in the toilet, thanks Daniel. Frank told the girls to not move, to stay at the front door, and Frank checked the entire house. That's when he got to Tina's bedroom, opened up her closet door, found a man with a face mask on, with a hatchet and a gun, and he ordered Frank and the girls to go into Tina's bedroom. Now, he obviously didn't pack enough ropes to tie up Tina's friend Kathleen. That's when Kathleen ran to a neighbour's house and called the police. Now, obviously, Daniel got spooked. Daniel ran away. And when the police came and with their dogs, they couldn't find him. But they did find evidence of him. He was in the crawl spaces. He had little holes, like I said, in the roofs and the walls. This guy was a creep. For 3 days, the family didn't live in their house while the police conducted their crime scene. They knew who it was though, they knew it was Daniel, and this is when they discovered that he had an obsession with Tina. So the family moved back in, and about a week after, this happened in December, so it was just before Christmas now, Frank returns home to see Daniel standing in the upstairs window looking out. Frank calls the police, they immediately go back round there, they don't find Daniel. They find evidence that he's been in the house because this little creep has found a family photo of the 2 girls and their dad and their mum when the girls were young, and he stuck a knife through it with a note saying, I'm still here, come and find me. Now, the thing is, they never found Daniel. They never found him again. Even the police dogs couldn't find him. Where the fuck is Daniel? Where is he? Next time you hear a little tap, a little scratch, maybe your milk's left out on the side, check your crawl spaces, check your lofts. There's creeps and weirdos out there.
This girl emailed me and told me that her mom went on a mission when she was 18 years old to Africa and nearly got possessed after praying over somebody else that she believes was definitely possessed. So this girl did not tell me whether I could use her real name or not, so we are going to call her Alicia. So Alicia's mom came from a very broken home when she was younger. 4 out of 5 family members were using, and unfortunately that included Alicia's mother. Now, 2 of the family members out of the 5 were very dangerous about this. Her father really started this with a very strong addiction to something that starts with an M. He was constantly cheating on her mom, fighting with her, and 6 months out of the year he was in jail. Not the greatest guy, but when she was 13 years old, he unfortunately ended things for himself. In fact, the long night after they found him, they saw him on the porch, but this is not where the story begins. That was just her upbringing. The story starts when they sent her to church and she went on a mission to Africa. So on the way to Africa, her mom actually loses all of the packed clothes that she brought and she actually never found them again. So when she gets to Africa, she teaches mothers how to be a proper parent to their children with the resources that they have, because they had to shower in like cockroach infested makeshift showers. Very sad. This went on for a little bit, but eventually she would go to a church and she would start spreading the word of God and she would pray for people. So how it would work is her and a couple other people would teach the word of God, and if somebody wanted them to pray over them, they would just come up to them and ask them to pray over them. Well, one day they come up to them and they're like, listen, we really need you to pray over this man. They're like, he's not able to be here, so we need you to travel to him. Now her mom said that she remembers wherever he was very dark and secluded, and he looked very sickly and he refused to talk. He was very discolored, skinny, and pale, and he would either mutter or be completely silent. So since they're not even really able to make conversation with him, they just begin the prayer and they circle around him. Now as they're praying, they start to realize that the more that they pray, this man is getting more and more resentful. He at one point starts yelling and he starts saying things that he probably shouldn't be saying. Now they're not looking at him, they're all praying and looking at the ground, or their eyes are closed. So as she's praying, her mother is looking at the ground, and for a second she decides to look up. So she looks up, and as soon as she looks up, his head goes from this to this, and he just smiles at her. His head just shoots up, and this smile is not a good one, and his eyes are so wide. Now she's looking at him and she is feeling extremely unsettled at this point, and she's wondering what the hell he's doing, when suddenly she notices that his face starts to distort, and then his body starts crumpling up, and he's making these weird movements, almost like his bones are breaking, like he's like going like this. She said that his body was just contorting in the weirdest, most impossible ways. But as he's doing this, his face is still distorting, and she starts to notice that it's distorting into different creatures, and she notices that one of these creatures is a lion. Now as she's looking at his face and realizing that it's distorting into a lion, she's not saying anything to anybody else, and nobody else is looking up. He starts saying horrible things to her. Now she actually didn't say exactly what he was saying, but whatever he was saying, he was tormenting her. He was saying some pretty awful things to her, and this went on for a very long time. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, one minute she's standing there staring at him, and the next minute she's on the ground on her knees gasping for air. And she also notices that all the other people that had gone there with her were now surrounding her in a prayer circle, and he was off to the side unconscious. So after all of this, she asked the people what happened, because she doesn't remember what happened from the time that she saw his face distorting to the time that she ended up on the ground. And what they tell her is pretty disturbing. They said that as they were praying, all of a sudden they just see her fall to the ground and she starts shaking, literally convulsing. Her eyes then rolled in the back of her head and they broke the prayer circle. It circled around her and started praying for her instead. Now the interesting thing is that what she didn't tell these people is, as this was going on and as she was looking at this man as he was morphing into something else and as he was tormenting her, she actually started to doubt God. She was doubting the belief of God as this was going on. And it was right as she started doubting God is when she has no memory of what else happened. So what her mother and the other people also think happened is that whatever this was that was tormenting her and was inside of this man was trying to get her to a place where she was doubting God. And as soon as she got to that place, it tried to leave him and possess her. But it was obviously unsuccessful, thank God, literally. Now she said that her mom was 19 when this happened, and her mom is actually a very strong-willed person despite the terrible things that have happened to her in life. She also said that her mom has nothing wrong with her that would make her hallucinate ever at any point in her life. And what Alicia basically wants to know is, does anybody know what this is, what this could have been, or what happened? Apparently this has stuck with her mom for a very long time, and it's really affected her very negatively because it scared the crap out of her. So drop all your thoughts, opinions, and suggestions down below, and then let me know what you guys think happened here.
And while that might look like a cute ranch home in Park City, Kansas, it's actually quite haunted. I'm a real estate agent in Wichita, Kansas. Let me tell you about it. This is a house that has no business being spooky and haunted. Literally no business. Hello to my cat. The day that I got there and I was setting up to do an open house, I walked down to the basement to turn on all the lights, And I'm literally there 15 minutes early, and I hear the front door open and someone run through the house. And I'm like, wow, okay, great. Somebody's already here. I haven't set anything up, but let me hurry up. So I run, turn the lights on, and I run back upstairs. So as soon as I hit these stairs, I'm running all the way up, looking around, and I'm like, hey, I'm down in the basement. Like, I'll be right there. Give me just a second. And literally no one there. There's literally no one there. I look in the bedrooms. I look outside on the patio. There's nobody there. And I thought, oh my God, no way. Because, I mean, I was tricked. I was tricked from the look of this house. What? Okay. So we're going to have a haunted 2005 house in Park City today. I love that. Okay, I do the open house. Nothing crazy happens. It's pretty busy. It's a popular area. It's a really nice house. So I was busy with people. Nothing else crazy happened. I'm like, this is cool. Then we go forward. Now we're fast forwarding to about a week and a half later. The house is under contract. Things are going awesome. And I get a call at like 9:45 from a neighbor who calls my number because it's on the sign, and he says, hey, the sprinklers are on and they have been on all day, so you are wasting a ton of water, and like, this is crazy. And I was like, oh no, okay. So I called my seller and I was like, hey, are you able to run by your house? He had already moved to a different house, but I'm like, your sprinklers are on and like, we got to go turn them off. They've been on all day, and the neighbor just let me know. And he's like, oh my gosh, no, I'm home with little kids and my wife isn't here, so I literally can't leave. Can you go and do it? And I was like, okay. I do live like 30 minutes away from this house, so I knew it was going to take me a while to get there, but I'm like, yep, let me put some clothes on. I'm on my way. So on the way there, I had called my broker because her husband is an inspector, and I was like, hey, I'm about to go figure out at like 10:30 how to turn off sprinklers. I don't know much about them. Like, are you available if I have questions? And she's like, yeah, girl, just call me if you can't figure it out. I'll put you on the phone with my husband and we'll get the sprinklers turned off. And I was like, okay, bet. So I'm headed out there. I get up to the house and I am unlocking the lockbox. And this house now matched the energy of, ooh, I'm scared to go in here by myself. I get that feeling sometimes, but I'm pretty tough. You know, I'm from the streets of Kingman. But I'm like, it's fine. So I unlock the door, and I felt scared as hell walking into this house for absolutely no reason, at all. But I walk into the garage, and I'm like, okay, let me figure out where these sprinklers are, and I see the Rainbird box on the wall, and I'm like, bet. Like, I have the same exact system at home, so this is gonna be no problem. So I walk up to it, and I open the panel, and there is nothing is lit up. And I'm like, what in the world? So I look, and I'm like, I turn it to off. It was on, but then I noticed that it was unplugged. And I'm like, how is it running if it's unplugged? Like, that doesn't really even make sense. Maybe I don't understand how this works. I don't know. So I hit the garage door and I plugged it in, and then I had everything on off, and it was off, and I'm like, great. So then I can see outside, I turned it on to like run a zone, and it starts running, and I'm like, okay, I figured it off. So I've got it to off, I've unplugged it, and right about that time, my broker texts me, and she's like, hey, how's it going? Like, did you figure it out? And so I pulled out my phone to text her back, and I'm walking in through this door right here, which is the garage door. So I pull out my phone, and it's cold outside. So my fingers felt like numb, and so I'm like, I'm gonna voice text her. So I pull up my phone and I click voice text, and I was like, hey, and I start to talk, and then it says, in my voice text, does she see us? And I'm like, what is that? So I erase everything because I didn't say that. And so I erase everything. I pull it back out again. I hit the microphone and I'm like, hey, it was fine. And then in my text box appears, just stand there. And I'm like, oh my God. And so I'm literally standing in the kitchen. I erase it one more time. And then I just left it open and I said nothing. And I'm just like looking around because it's picking up somebody's voice and it says, "Oh, she sees us." The blood drained out of my skin. I'm literally, I don't know if you can see this, I have goosebumps right now, telling you guys the story. And so I was like, okay, act calm, act like you don't know, I guess. I don't know what to do. This is pretty crazy. And so I started to just walk very fast to the front door. And as I get to the front door, I'm trying to pull it shut. It's got the, slow close door on the front of it. And I've got to get it closed, and I've got to lock it with my lockbox. As soon as I got the door pulled shut, this screen on this window pops off. Just pops off while I'm pulling the door shut. It pops off before I get the door shut. So it wasn't like I pulled the door hard and then the screen popped off. And even if you do pull the door hard, it should not pop the screen off. So like, what? No. So I get the door shut, and I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I can't even lock it. There is quite a bit of nightlight with street lights on, and so I'm literally in the yard. I'm just standing there. The screen's on the ground, and I thought, I'm just driving away. And so I'm standing there, and I'm like, I can't leave somebody's house unlocked. Like, this is crazy. So I walk up, and I pull the key out of the thing, and I had pulled it locked, and I'm putting the key in, and I'm just shaking with the lockbox, trying to get it locked. And then I back up, literally shaking, telling you the story. I back up, and the screen and the door is just slowly closing shut, and then it just slams. And there's no way it should slam. It's on a piston hinge, the things that slowly close. And I'm just like backing up off the steps, trying to look around. I get to my car, I'm just shaking. I'm like, oh my God, I can't even drive. So then I pull out of the driveway, and I thought, I've got to just like go away for a minute. And so I ended up going like a couple houses up. I just pulled over, then I pulled out my phone. I tried to look at it, and there was nothing. No text had went through, and there was nothing still written there. But I called my broker in a panic, and I was like, I just had the scariest experience of my life. And she was like very shocked by that, and she's like, of all the houses that would be haunted, like, it's a house like that? I'm like, right? Like, who would have thought? Yeah, but Park City, I think it's a great house. It's beautiful. I don't know that the ghost was there just for me, because the owner said he experienced nothing in the house, nothing at all, and he did not like my story. So I don't know. I had to do quite a few more things at the house, and nothing else happened. But I was very quick with it. I didn't stay very long. Thank you for listening to my story. If you want more, add me.
If you woke up at 3:17 every single night, what would you do? Welcome back to a series I like to call Scary Ass Stories That Y'all Send Me. This one really caught my attention because this is something that happens to me very frequently when I know something is about to happen. Let's get into it. Someone's email said that they would like to remain anonymous, so for obvious reasons, I'm gonna respect that. But for the story's sake, I will be referring to this person as Colby. At the beginning of this email, Colby explains that he was 20 years old, living with his parents, and his bedroom was at the top of the stairs at the end of the hallway. So anything or anyone that needed to get to his door would have to pass everybody else's bedroom and the bathroom to get there. This all started with him waking up at 3:17 every single night. And at first, he didn't think anything of it. He would look at his phone, roll over, go back to sleep. And Colby was realizing that he was only waking up at 3:17 a.m., not 3:16, not 3:18, 3:17 on the dot every single night. After maybe 4 or 5 nights, waking up at 3:17 in the morning, Colby just decided that his body was going through this weird motion where it just thought this was a good time to wake up. And then he started hearing these heavy footsteps. This was also something that happened multiple nights in a row. The first night, he thought it was just one of his parents getting out for a glass of water in the middle of the night. And the scary part is Colby could hear every single step that was being taken towards his bedroom. Once he figured out that whatever it was not getting water, it was not going to the bathroom, it was standing right outside his door, which meant that it had walked all the way down the hallway. He just waited for any sign of his parents just being up in the middle of the night. He waited about 30 seconds before just calling out and saying hello. There's no answer, so Colby gets up, opens the door, and there's nobody there. The hallway was completely empty. He walks down to the bathroom. Bathroom is completely empty. Everyone's bedroom door was closed, so he just assumed that whoever it was just went back to bed. Until the next morning when they were all having breakfast with each other. And Colby casually asks, who was up at 3 a.m.? And none of them had been. And this is when it started bothering Colby. And again, the following night, he wakes up at 3:17 and is immediately frightened because he can hear these footsteps already in the hallway. And as they're inching closer, Colby's fear just grows and grows and grows until he hears the footsteps stop right in front of his door. And as he hears these footsteps stop in front of his door, his phone vibrates. And the motion camera in the living room had gone off and sent a notification to everybody's phone. At first, Colby says that he was extremely relieved because it meant that there was someone there in the house physically. We opened up the camera app and the living room was empty and the lights were off. So he played the clip. And at first, nothing was happening until he saw something move in the corner of the screen. And whatever it was had passed by the camera in the direction of the stairs leading up to the bedrooms. And right as he watches this clip, he hears one of the footboards creak in the hallway. Colby's obviously frightened and immediately freezes up. As this is all happening, he is watching his doorknob to his bedroom begin to turn down as if somebody is outside turning the doorknob in. The moment he saw his doorknob moving, he leaped up, runs over to the door and locks it. Just stares at this doorknob like, who is in the house? The doorknob stops moving and he can't hear any movement outside of the door, so he calls his dad. Dad answered the phone half asleep, and the moment that Colby said, "There's someone outside of my door," his dad immediately got up to investigate. But nobody was there. In fact, they checked the entire house and there was no one there. All the windows were locked, all the doors were locked, and there was no sign of forced entry. Nobody had been there. He eventually showed his dad the little clip that he had from the motion detected camera. His dad watched it a few times and just said, like, it was probably a bug flying too close to the camera and it just, like, caught the motion. Colby wanted to believe his dad until he said something that made his stomach drop. His dad asked him why he was walking around downstairs at 2 a.m. When Colby said he wasn't, his dad had said that is the exact reason why he woke up in the first place at 2 a.m. was because he could hear somebody walking downstairs. And obviously after that, Colby didn't sleep a wink. The next morning, he checked the security camera footage. There were 3 motion detected notifications on his phone. One at 2:46 a.m., 3:15 a.m., and 3:17 a.m. 3:15 clip showed the little shadow moving towards the stairs. The 3:17 clip showed nothing, it seemed like. At first, it seemed like the clip was like totally normal. Empty living room, empty staircase. Till Colby saw this figure standing at the top of the stairs. And it looked like a person. So Colby took a screenshot and showed his entire family. And nobody could explain it. At this point in time, because nobody could explain it, but it was clearly a person, they were checking even the attic because they had thought like maybe somebody had been living up there. That night, Colby slept with his door locked. And again, woke up at 3:17. Nothing was happening, and that somehow scared him more. He was just extremely fixated on the door and waiting for the knob to start turning. Eventually, he ended up reaching for his phone and saw that there was another motion activation detection in the living room. He almost didn't open it, but when he did, it was absolutely horrifying. The clip that had been taken was a video of a silhouette staring into the camera. Didn't make out any of the facial features. It was basically just a dark silhouette that was staring directly into the camera for about 5 seconds before it just turns its head and walks towards the staircase. And that's when Colby started to hear the footsteps again. And eventually they stopped right outside his door. And whatever it was on the other side of this door decided to try the doorknob again. Only this time when it found that the door was locked, it didn't stop. It started knocking. Knocked 3 times before Colby just picked up the phone and called his dad and said it's happening again. Dad goes out to the hallway. There's no one there. After that, Colby's parents actually had a professional come out and look at the cameras and make sure nothing weird was happening. And then it eventually just all stopped. The footsteps, waking up at 3:17, everything had stopped. Months had gone by and Colby at this point had just convinced himself that this didn't even happen. Until one afternoon when he was going through some old photos and saw the screenshot that he had taken. And he had looked at this photo like a million times before, but he had never caught this small detail. In the screenshot, Colby's door is visible from the photo. In the photo, the door to his bedroom is open, so whatever was supposedly standing outside of his door hadn't walked up to his door. It was looking into his room from the hallway and walking away. If that doesn't give you chills, I don't know what does. Some notes for the end of this video, but I honestly am so terrified that I'm just gonna end it here. It's gonna do it for me. Stay tuned for more ghost stories.
A hospice nurse noticed the same unusually pale man visiting several patients just hours before they passed away. He wasn't related to any of them. He never appeared on any of the visitor logs, and according to the oldest nurse that was in the building, he hadn't aged a single day in at least 31 years. So I found this story on a forum, and it's about a woman who claimed that she worked the night shift at a small hospice facility in Northern California. And I'm going to call her Michelle. And as always, I have no way of verifying any of it, so take this story for what it is, and you can decide for yourselves. Now, Michelle said most nights there were pretty quiet nights. The nurses kept the lights low, families slept in chairs beside their loved ones, and the hallways were always filled with that soft hum of the oxygen machines. And death was obviously a very big part of this job. But after a few years, she had learned to recognize when someone was getting close to the end. But what she couldn't explain was this one particular visitor. So Michelle first saw him sometime after 2 in the morning, and he was sitting beside an elderly man named Mr. Keller. The man was very tall, very thin, dressed in a very dark gray suit that looked decades out of place. His skin was so pale that under the fluorescent lights, it almost looked colorless. So she assumed maybe he was a family member, but when she stepped into the room and asked if they needed anything, he didn't even answer. He simply just turned toward her, put one finger over his lips, and he looked back at Mr. Keller. She felt kind of uncomfortable with the interaction, but the patient appeared calm, so whatever. For the first time in several days, his breathing wasn't strained, his face was very relaxed, and one of his hands was resting on top of the stranger's. He looked pretty peaceful. But when she returned 15 minutes later, the chair was now empty and Mr. Keller had passed away at 2:37 a.m. Now, the next morning, Michelle asked Mr. Keller's daughter about the man in the gray suit. And his daughter looked very confused, and she's like, no one else except for me has come to visit him at night, or even last night. And when she described him, the woman insisted she had no idea who he was. But she told herself that, maybe she misunderstood something, right? Maybe he was a chaplain, a volunteer, or a relative that the daughter didn't know about. Then she saw the man again. 3 weeks later, he was standing in a doorway of another patient's room. This time, it was a woman named Evelyn, and she had advanced lung cancer, and Evelyn had been barely responsive for about 2 days at this point. But when she walked past, she heard the woman speaking very clearly. And she's like, I knew you would come back. And Evelyn whispered, and the pale man leaned closer and said something that she couldn't hear. But when she entered the room, he was gone yet again. There was only one entrance, and she had been standing directly outside of it. The windows were sealed shut, and the bathroom was completely empty. Evelyn passed away before sunrise. And after that, she began paying a little bit more closer attention to the visitor log. She wrote down, dates and room numbers and every time that she saw him. And over the next 4 months, he appeared beside 5 different patients, and every single one of them passed away within hours of him visiting them. But the strangest part was that some of those patients weren't expected to pass that night. One man had been sitting up and talking to his family earlier that evening. Another woman had actually improved enough that her doctor was discussing moving her to a different care facility, getting her out of hospice. But after this pale man visited them, they were gone before morning. So Michelle finally spoke to a senior nurse named Margaret, and she had worked at that longer than anyone else. Michelle expected her to laugh it off and be like, oh, it's this crazy guy, whatever. Instead, the moment that she mentioned the guy in the gray suit, Margaret's face changed. She brought Michelle into the medication room, she closed the door, and she asked her to describe him to a T, what he looked like. And she's like, he's very tall, he's very thin, nearly white skin, dark hair, combed neatly to one side, gray suit, no coat, no matter how cold it is, he's outside. Margaret listened without interrupting, and then she removed an old photograph from the back of her locker. And it showed several staff members standing outside the building during its grand reopening in 1995. And Margaret was in the photograph, much younger and wearing an old-fashioned nurse's uniform. And behind the group, standing near one of the windows, was the pale man. He looked exactly the same. And Margaret said that, she first encountered him during her second week at that hospice facility 31 years earlier. A patient had been screaming for hours, terrified of dying, but shortly after that man entered her room, the screaming had stopped, and Margaret found the patient smiling peacefully. and she said her brother had finally come to take her home. Margaret explained, but hey, your brother has been, gone for nearly 40 years now. But according to Margaret, the staff had tried reporting the man several times over the years, and security cameras would show doors opening by themselves, but he never appeared on any of the footage. Patients and nurses could see him very clearly, as real as you and me are. Yet cameras captured nothing but empty hallways and empty rooms. Eventually, the older employees stopped mentioning him altogether. He became kind of like a legend amongst those that have been there for a while. They even developed, an unofficial rule that if the man entered a patient's room, they allowed the family to know it might be time to come and say goodbye. So Michelle asked Margaret who she thought he was. Margaret said she didn't believe, him because, that he caused anyone's death. She believed he came because death was already there. But then she gave Michelle a warning, and she told her if she ever sees him anywhere except the patient's room, you need to leave the building immediately. Now, Michelle didn't fully understand what she meant by that, but several weeks later, she was finishing her shift when she noticed the pale man standing at the far end of the hallway. And every time, the patient's door was closed, he wasn't looking at any of them. He was standing directly in the hallway, staring right at Michelle. And he slowly lifted one hand and he pointed toward the nurse's station behind her. And sitting there was Margaret. And before Michelle could say anything, Margaret suddenly grabbed her chest and she collapsed. And Michelle called for help, and the staff worked on her until the ambulance had arrived, but Margaret passed away on the way to the hospital. And Michelle never returned to that hospice company after that night ever again. So let me know what you guys think. Was this an angel of death? Something more darker, more supernatural? Let me know in the comments.
Live in North Wales. Back in 2015, when I left school, I got a job at an old card shop. The shop floor was creepy, but upstairs, where the storage rooms and toilet were, was way worse, as it was dark and just had an eerie feeling to it. I worked there for just over a year. At that time, I was a young girl figuring out my life. Upon handing my notice in, strange things started to happen at home. I'd wake up to see a small figure at the end of my bed. It would happen at least twice a week. After months had passed, I got used to seeing this figure and it had just become normal. I think it would show up when I had a bad day. This continued for years, even when I started renting my own place in 2022. It came with me. I'd wake up and see it in my new bedroom. The figure was short, maybe 4 foot something. Sometimes it would be sat on the bed and other times it would be walking around or just standing there. A year later, I had a reading done by a psychic. On the way there, we nearly had a car crash on the motorway. A small navy blue car pulled in front of us and we had to slam the brakes on. It was really close. When we got to the psychic's house, she told me that I had an attachment.
Oh.
She told me that the attachment wasn't bad and that he was protecting me. She said he saved me from a car crash where a navy car pulled in front of us. She said that Joey was protecting me. I didn't tell her I'd seen a small figure at this point. I asked her where he'd come from. She told me that I picked him up at Church Street, which was the name of the street I worked on in the card shop, and that it was when I worked at the butcher's. I told her I'd never worked at a butcher's. She then closed her eyes and said that Joey said I worked at the butcher's like he did, but it burnt down and that he died in the fire. She never mentioned the card shop. She also told me that Joey was showing her an image of me hair drying my bed. To my shock, I told her I didn't have an iron, so I used the hairdryer to get the creases out of my clothes and bedding.
Oh.
She told me Joey was scared of the hairdryer and that I needed to warn him out loud before I used it.
Oh my God, sad.
She also told me that he hated me slamming the doors in the house. After that, I went away and did some research and found out that the shop, or the one next door, which was linked via the upstairs storage area, was once a butcher's shop.
Wow.
And a young boy named Joseph had worked there. The butchers did catch fire, but I found nothing on any deaths. If that's true, what you've sent us,
It's just too specific.
that's
What-
not a cold read.
No.
Like, that is psychic. Fast forward to 2025 and 2026, and I haven't seen Joey. My belief was that it was because I'm finally at a place in my life where I have a wonderful man caring for me, and I feel quite emotional about this, and I'm at my happiest. I don't know, I'm obviously due on my period as well. I bought a house in January 2026, and I haven't seen him once. It made me feel sad, but I hope it meant that Joey is now at peace.
The person that sent me the story called it Meeting with My Grandfather. By the way, if you have a story that you'd like to share with our glitch community about glitches in the Matrix, dreams, aliens, cryptids, or the paranormal, you can send it to this email address. And remember, we believe you. Hi, into Matrix. Hi! I wanted to share this deeply personal experience with you. Since I was a kid, I have had my own experiences with supernatural visions, lucid dreams, etc. But when I would share these experiences with anyone, they just thought that I had an overactive imagination. I often had deja vu or dreams or something that would happen in the future, but none of these experiences were as personal as this. My maternal grandfather had died in 2009. I'm so sorry. I loved him dearly, but I did not get to meet him before he passed away or could go to his funeral, and there was a part of me that always regretted not being able to say goodbye to him. After his death, my grandmother was bedridden for many years. One night in January of 2024, I had one of those dreams which felt so real that I could smell and feel everything around me. I was in this strange house, and it was winter and foggy. There was a huge swing bed in the courtyard of that house where me and my son and my mom and all of my mom's brothers and family were sitting. Apparently, the house belonged to me and we were all having a good time. Then I see my grandfather appear before us and smile and bless us. However, only I could see him and no one else. I was going through the most difficult time of my life during those days, and his presence made me feel safe. The next night, I have another dream where I find myself in a strange old wooded cottage in the middle of a snowy mountain. There, I see my grandma sitting on a bed just like she always does. Then I see my grandfather cleaning his dentures in the bathroom. He had used artificial dentures ever since I was a kid. He looks away from the bathroom mirror and gets really upset and says, "You are not supposed to be here. Leave right now." I was hurt because yesterday he made me feel so seen and loved, and today he was so angry and throwing me out of his cottage, which clearly belonged to him and my grandma. I told him, "There's snowstorm outside. How can I leave now? Please let me stay. Aren't you happy to see me at all?" But he kept shouting and pushing me out. I was confused. Why would he push me out during the storm? Suddenly, I'm thrown out of the cottage and it gets swallowed up by the storm, both of my grandparents inside it. I wake up right after I see the cottage vanish in front of my eyes. I am sad, but I had to get to work early. You need to know that my dreams are often cryptic in nature, and I realized the message later. It can be next day or next year, but my dreams almost always carry a hidden message. At work, while I'm still trying to figure out what did my dream mean, my phone rings and my husband informs me that my grandmother had passed away early morning, somewhere between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. She was living with my uncle and they found her when they went to wake her up that morning. At that moment, it all became so obvious to me that Grandpa came to show me that I am loved and also to say goodbye. It was not a cryptic message, but I had in fact met my grandpa. Though passing away of my grandma was a huge loss, but the peace I experienced knowing that he was looking over us and made sure I get to see him one last time is something I cannot explain in words, and I would always be grateful for it. The end. Oh, I love when we have these sweet stories. They're so nice. I love when loved ones come to visit us in dreams. He was absolutely coming to visit you the first night, and I wonder if the second night, he clearly didn't call you. He didn't come to visit you the second night, and he clearly didn't call you to come visit him. If he was like, "You can't be here, please leave right now." So I wonder if your soul went to find him the next night and he was there busy taking your grandma home with him. I'm glad that you got to see them, and you got to see the fact that even though it was kind of scary and he was yelling at you to get out, I'm glad that you were able to see that he came and got your grandma. And so you know that they're together, you know that he's okay. You got to say goodbye to him. That stuff is good. That's so interesting. I'm so sorry for your losses, but thank you so much for sharing your story.
Did you know that there is a place on Earth that you can visit until this day that is entirely built by jinns? The place that I'm talking about is located in Lebanon, and it's called the Temple of Baalbek. The place is also known as the ancient temple complex of Baalbek, and each block that you're seeing right now, it weighs around 800 tons. The blocks are also so fit and so perfectly fit together that makes it almost impossible and hard to believe that this was done thousands of years ago. So how is this possible without modern tools? Well, the story goes way back to King Solomon, who in some religions like Islam, he was a strong king and a prophet that could talk to other living creatures and have authority over jinn. One day, King Solomon wanted to build a big-ass building as a gift for Queen of Sheba, and for that, he ordered his strongest jinns to do it. So according to the stories, the jinns started accumulating huge stones, cutting them, and putting them on top of each other to construct the building. You see, while the building was being constructed, King Solomon sadly, and when it happened, the jinns stopped working because they don't have a leader anymore. That's why you can see some huge blocks like this scattered around the area. And it was years later that the Roman Empire came and built those pillars. The most important question now is that, do you believe this?
I
took this photo for a modeling application late one night. When I checked it later, I got the chills. Right outside my window, standing at my late grandma's old house behind ours, was the faint figure of an old woman wearing green, just like the last outfit my grandma wore before she passed 3 years ago. I do miss her, but the photo gives me goosebumps. This is a childhood photo of myself from when I was 10, taken by a local photographer. Although I was the only one inside the house while everyone else was outside for a barbecue, you can see someone peeking out from behind the curtain. The ghosts in this photo are two apparitions seen right by the staircase. They've haunted my school's theater for a long time. The apparitions commonly seen are old students and staff who have been at the school in the past and have stayed there. The school has been a hot spot from the beginning of its time since it was built on a Native American burial ground. My mom and I live alone in a house that has always felt haunted. The scariest moment was when I got up to go to the bathroom and I felt an overwhelming presence following directly behind me with every step. A few days later, my mom sent me a photo she took at home that appeared to show a dark figure standing by our window. After seeing the photo, a psychic told us they believed there was a powerful negative presence in our house, a demon.
So everyone wants to know what happened in my stream on Saturday night. Buckle up, because out of all the scary stories that I tell you guys, this one is gonna chill your bones. I'm about to explain to you guys why I haven't been posting and why I haven't been streaming. I've been scared. You guys remember at the end of my stream when somebody tapped on my window of my car, right? What happened was I drove off and this person got in a truck and started following me. You guys know that I carry safety, okay? I eventually got sick of it and I stopped. I got out and I did what someone would do when they carry safety. Let's just say, me and this tweaker, you guys remember me encountering a tweaker out in the woods? Me and this tweaker end up getting into a brawl in the middle of the street and somebody had called the cops on us. Hang on, because this gets way worse, guys. Today we both see the cop lights coming, he jumps in his truck, I jump in my car, we both start taking off and both get pulled over. Both of us end up getting put in cuffs. Both of us end up going to jail. Yes, I spent Saturday night in jail and I have not been streaming all week because I have been terrified, and I'm about to tell you why. Turns out, this gentleman is still in jail, and he has been stalking me out there in the woods for the past 3 weeks, and the Airbnb that I have been staying at, her best friend's brother's body was just found out there not long ago, and it's a nationwide case out there. That could have been me. People don't understand the things that we do with these streamers out in the woods. It is dangerous, especially someone like me. I'm a younger girl and it is extremely dangerous to be doing this. I haven't been posting because I've been really scared of I know it's a lot. There's also been other stuff going on, you guys, but just know that this is no joke. I am gonna start streaming again this coming week though, just to let you guys know, okay? And this is why I always tell you guys the same thing I say in all my other stories. There's only one thing worse than animals and cryptids out in the woods, and that's people.
More comments I should not be reading at night. Paranormal experiences at a haunted preschool day center. So at mine, the sink downstairs in the one classroom would randomly turn on. You have to put your hands under for it to turn on. My walkie would randomly start flashing when I get to that room. Then when I get out, the walkie is fine. I've seen shadow figures go behind a bookshelf before and seen a scooter move across the room when no kid was by there. Then once the soap dispenser flew off the wall and splattered everywhere on the floor. I'm not joking either. I'm a preschool teacher too. We've had lights go on and off. Kids say names of people who don't work here while pointing at corners. Say there's a tall man with a hat, doors closed, but the weirdest one was knocking from under the floor. There is no basement. There's only one level to the building, and we're across the street from a cemetery. I was an AP at a high school so haunted that we couldn't turn the alarm system on at night because the motion detectors would go off multiple times every night. Doors to a courtyard, not accessible from outside the building, would be open when we arrived on a regular basis. Orbs and other anomalies showed up in the photos frequently. Our head custodian and the former principal both reported seeing a young girl in a blue dress in the hallway long after the building was closed for the night. I frequently heard noises, especially interior doorknobs being rattled like someone trying to open a locked door when I worked in my office on the weekends. Was a spooking place at times. I worked at a haunted daycare. Building used to be a convent for retired nuns, and our boss stopped getting us in trouble for leaving lights on and off when we left because the ghosts would turn them on so often. Plus, the time a 4-year-old kid saw an old woman in a long black dress, I felt something watching me and it scared me, watching us from the second floor as we went down the stairs to the first floor, and I knew the kid and I were the only people in the building. We played outside till he got picked up, and I only went 2 steps in the building to turn the hallway light off. No, but those ghosts have to pay the electric bill because that's not fair. At the center I used to work at, we were close to set up paint our classrooms in preparation for the new school year. We were taking a break eating pizza in one of the rooms, and all of us were there. No one else was in the building, and suddenly the infant room door slammed shut. It was so loud, we all freaked out, and everyone was too scared to go back to our own rooms, so we all just worked as a group and left as soon as we could. We did not work on the infant room. It's crazy when you hear a door slam when you and a coworker are the last 2 people in the daycare and you're both in the same room together. I actually had my first encounter with the full apparition in a preschool I worked at. The toys would come to life and everything. Also, Dino as a pulley is awesome. So is this Toy Story 6, I guess. What is with daycares? My friend owns one across the street from a Freemason church, and crazy stuff has been happening since it opened. Sleep paralysis when workers go home, a whole fence ripped out of the playground area, window shutters opening, and a tall black shadow they feel as a man. It was a massage parlor with happy endings that got raided before they bought it. They've cleansed it multiple times and nothing helps. These ghosts are looking for vengeance in a kid center. I'm scaring myself. Okay, that's enough for me tonight. I'll see you guys tomorrow.
5 minutes into an escape room, we found a woman chained to the floor, and she begged us not to solve the next clue. This is Scared with Jess, and today's story is about the escape room that we never finished. I was 21 when this happened, and I went with 3 friends to one of those horror-themed escape rooms built inside an old warehouse. The room was supposed to be about a missing woman. Pretty standard horror stuff. You had an hour to search the room, solve the puzzles, and figure out what happened to her. Before we went in, the employee told us the usual things. Don't force anything and don't climb on anything. If we needed help, there was a button beside the entrance. And then he locked the door behind us and started the timer. The first room looked like an old apartment. There were family photos and newspapers and drawers to search. Within a few minutes, we found a key hidden inside a hollowed-out book. We assumed it opened a desk or a cabinet, but it didn't. And then my friend Leah noticed a narrow wooden door tucked behind a curtain. The key fit, and we opened it. There was a tiny room on the other side, almost like an old storage closet. And there was a woman sitting on the floor. For a second, all 4 of us just stared at her. She had one ankle chained to an exposed pipe, and her hair was tangled and her makeup was smeared down her face like she had been crying. And then she looked at us and said, "Close the door." We started laughing, not because it was funny. It was just scaring us so badly that we assumed she had to be part of the game. Leah said, "Okay, you got us." And the woman didn't smile. She pulled out the chain around her ankle. "Please, close it." One of my friends asked if we were supposed to find a key for her, and she looked immediately at him. No. And then she pointed past us towards the main room. There was a locked metal box sitting on a table. We had already found numbers around the same room that clearly went to the combination. The woman said, "Don't open that." That made us even more convinced she was an actor. The whole theme was a missing woman. Of course, there was a woman hidden in the room telling us not to continue. I remember telling her, "You're really good at this." And she just stared at me. And then she said, "How many of you came in?" I said 4, and her eyes moved across us one by one. And then she whispered, "There were 5 when you opened the door." Nobody laughed after that. We all turned around and there was nobody behind us. The main room was empty, and my friend Tyler told her to stop. She started crying, not theatrical crying either. She looked genuinely terrified. She said, "You need to leave before you open that box." I asked her what was in it, and she shook her head. "I don't know." And then she looked towards the ceiling. "But it knows when you're close." At that point, I actually walked over to the help button. I pressed it, and nothing happened. We waited, pressed it again, still nothing. Tyler said maybe that was part of the game too, and then the speaker in the ceiling crackled. A voice said, 22 minutes remaining. So obviously somebody was still monitoring us. That calmed us down a little, and we decided the woman had to be part of it. We went back to the puzzle and she kept telling us to stop. Eventually, she started screaming at us. Please, just leave it locked. Leah figured out the combination, and the second she touched the final number, the woman stopped screaming completely. I looked over and she was staring at the metal box. Leah opened it, and inside was another key and a folded piece of paper. Tyler picked up the paper and it said, "Let her out." We all looked at the woman and she started shaking her head. No. The key fit the lock on the chain around her ankle, and I remember crouching beside her and saying, "It's okay, we're obviously supposed to free you." And she grabbed my wrist hard and said, "I'm not the one you're letting out." And then every light in the room went off. Somebody screamed, and I heard the chain scraping across the floor. Something hit the wall beside me, and I heard the little wooden door slam shut. The lights came back on maybe 5 seconds later. The woman was gone. The chain was still wrapped around the pipe and the padlock was still closed. There was no broken link, nothing. She had just disappeared from inside it. That was when we were done. All 4 of us started banging on the entrance door and we hit the help button over and over. Let us out. Nothing. And then we heard knocking, 3 slow knocks from inside the little room. Leah started crying and Tyler said not to open it. Another 3 knocks, and then the woman whispered from the other side, "You opened it." The voice was different now, quieter, almost calm. Something scratched the inside of the wooden door, and then we heard her say, "It's standing behind you." None of us turned around, we just kept pounding on the main door, and finally it unlocked. We practically fell into the hallway. The employee who had checked us in was standing there looking completely confused. He asked why we had been yelling. And we immediately started talking over each other about the woman, and he said, "What woman?" We told him there had been an actress chained inside the small room behind the curtain, and his face changed. He walked past us into the escape room, and we followed him as far as the entrance. He pulled the curtain aside, and the little wooden door was there, but now there was a padlock on the outside of it, an old one, rusty. The employee stared at it, and then he asked, "How did you open this?" I told him we found the key inside the book, and he said there was no key in the book, that the book was just decoration. And then he told us that the closet wasn't part of the escape room at all. It was old storage and they never used it. He said the padlock had been on it since before he started working there. Nobody wanted to stay and figure out the rest, so we left. A couple of days later, Leah called the escape room because she wanted our money back. She asked whether they had found anything in that closet, and the person on the phone told her they had opened it and it was empty, just an exposed pipe along the wall, and scratches all over the floor. I asked Leah if they said what made them, and she said no. But before hanging up, the employee asked her something. He wanted to know which one of us had been knocking from inside the closet after we left, and none of us had. Anyway, good luck sleeping tonight.
This is the most compelling photo evidence of the paranormal that I've ever seen. My girlfriend went to a birthday party at an old bar in Hollywood. When they uploaded all the pictures onto Facebook, people started to notice something really weird about this certain picture. It has not been edited at all. This photo was taken in the year 2000 in the Philippines. 2 friends were having a night out when they stopped a passerby and asked him to take a photo of them. The photo was taken on a cell phone, and there was nobody else around them, yet the picture appears to capture a strange shadow holding on to one of the girls. The owner of this photo explained this picture was taken around 2009 by my daughter, Sarah Rose Patterson, and her friend while they were playing on the computer. The house that we lived in at the time was more than 100 years old. I'm hoping that someone might be able to help us understand what can be seen in the space between the sheet and the doorway. This is a photo taken back when film was the only option. It's a photo of my coworker's great-great-grandma. It was taken by her grandfather as the building was burning down. Her great-great-grandma had passed away years prior, but you can see her in the kitchen.
Axe in hand, the vibe is set, and once I start, Don't eat too much, because you gotta stay fine. But come on, besties. Yeah. Hi, bestie boo. I missed you so much. I know. I'm here with the story, and that's all that matters, right? Right, so go get your snack and go get your rolling essentials, okay? All right. And this time, let's try to go for a healthy snack. I know that ain't gonna work, but try. Anyway, let's go straight into the story. So the story is actually from Senegal. Let's say it in the Creole accent because I don't know how to say it the right way in English. So for the sake of this story, let's call this girl Jazzy. So Jazzy was in a very toxic relationship. However, the guy that she was with was very religious. He was kind too, but he was also like religious. Jazzy knew him for about 10 years because they used to live in the same neighborhood. Anyway, they started to date, they like each other, this could work. But within the first few months, Jazzy started to dream about a very strange woman. And not only was she dreaming about her, she could like sense her presence, But she didn't put two and two together or think too much of it because she was always the type to have strange dreams. She's been having them since she was like a child. So it was just like, oh, it's probably one of those dreams again, Anyway, so they ended up being together for about 3 years. But throughout the time that she was with this man, her energy was drained so much. So that was definitely something that she noticed, right? However, between 2024 and 2025 was when she discovered that that man was cheating. She discovered the lies, the cheating, the manipulation. She discovered a lot. Y'all want to know the strangest thing about this story is that the next part that I'm about to tell y'all, I went back to the story to try and, just make sure I'm getting all the information right. That specific part is gone, and now I feel crazy. Because I literally read the story, right? And I started to tell it to y'all, but I wanted to go back just to make sure I got the details right. And it disappeared. Like, the full story is still there. I'm looking at it. But that specific paragraph is freaking gone. And now I feel like I'm going crazy because I remember it. I remember reading it. I remember the words, but it's gone from the email. Everything else is there. There was even a part in French that I noticed. Like, it was like one sentence in French specifically. And the sentence itself is weird too, but something's telling me not to tell y'all what it is. That sentence is gone. I'm gonna keep on with telling y'all the story though. I just really, really wanted to tell y'all this because that's crazy. Anyway, this is where things start to go down. And this happened around last year. So Jazzy is sleeping, right? And around 1 a.m., she wakes up to go use the bathroom. So she uses the bathroom. She goes back into bed. And this, I'm going to put it right here because I don't know how to say it and I don't want to butcher it. This was playing on loop. Like she always has it on loop. Anyway, the moment she laid her head back on that pillow, she found herself on an astral plane. She was still in her room though, but she knew she was on an astral plane. The moment she knew, she felt the presence. And when she looked, the presence that she felt took the face of her boyfriend. And I mean, it was wearing the exact same clothes as the boyfriend and everything. The thing is, she knew it wasn't her boyfriend because the space between her and that wall she was looking at was way too narrow for a human to fit in there. So there's no way it could have been her boyfriend. But she already knew, right? Because she knew she was on an astral plane. Boom. Once she realized this was going on, she started to pray. And the moment she opened her mouth to pray, something grabbed her mouth to stop her from praying. So she's thinking, she's already knowing what's going on, right? Because ever since she was a child, she'd always been in, like, not situations like this. Like, she always found herself having dreams like this. That's how she knew she was on an astral plane. Anyway, she played it smart. So the moment the thing put their hand over her mouth, she pretended that she fainted. She focused and started to praying, and started to pray to God in her heart. Well, in her head too, but y'all know what I mean. Y'all know the devil can only hear your words. So, like, the devil can't hear your thoughts. So the moment she did that, the thing left, right? She was back to normal. That was crazy, but it wasn't too crazy because, again, like, she's used to stuff like that. Anyway, a week later, she's sleeping. The thing is back. And this time, it came with reinforcements. And it was still wearing her boyfriend's face. And the difference is this time, the thing is violent. Like, he started to abuse her and then tried to SA her. She was trying to fight back, but it was definitely stronger than her. So she kind of just like gave in, hoping that it would just let her go. But when she gave in, it then pulled out a bottle. She said the bottle looked like it had a liquid that looked like sperm mixed with glitter. She later found out that it was actually mercury. There's so much in this world that y'all don't even know. The thing then proceeded to try to pour that thing on her hoo-ha. I know that she gave in, but at that point she was like, no, 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 no. This entire time, it's kind of like she's also in a sleep paralysis state because she can't move. So once she saw that it was about to do that to her, she literally cried out to God and said, God, please save me. You see what's happening to me. If you don't save me right now, I'll be lost. All of a sudden, right after she said that, she's able to move. The moment she was able to move, she ran out of her apartment. She went to her neighbor. Well, she saw her neighbor. She asked her neighbor, like, hey, can I please use your phone so I can call my boyfriend? Well, the neighbor hands her the phone. She takes the phone. She's calling the boyfriend. The boyfriend is not answering. As she's about to give the phone back to the neighbor, she looked at the neighbor and had this realization. She looked at the neighbor and realized that the neighbor was the reinforcement that that thing came with. The neighbor was a different entity. So she starts running away from the neighbor and start running back to her house towards the stairs. Guess who was there up the stairs? The other entity wearing her boyfriend's face. And it looked right at her and said to her, you really thought you were going to escape us? And right after he said that, she woke up. She woke up absolutely terrified. The next 3 days, she felt like her own brain was flipping inside her own head. She was not the same. She didn't feel the same. She felt like her body was literally running on autopilot. She basically damn near lost her mind for those 3 days, to the point where her boss literally called her to check on her because her boss said to her that she looked soulless. Like, in her eyes, she just looked soulless. After those 3 days, unfortunately, she lost everything. Her house, her job, like literally lost everything. To find out that night she was having that dream and she called the boyfriend. The boyfriend was literally in bed with another girl. He has been unemployed for a year and can't seem to make a penny. She also wanted to clarify that during that dream, she wasn't really asleep. She was back on that astral plane. It's a state between sleeping and wakefulness where things are crazy and real. So although it seemed like it was a dream, it wasn't really a dream. It was actually happening. Anyway, fast forward, she kind of, figured what was going to happen. Well, what was happening to her. So she took a spiritual bath and basically prayed for deliverance. This is still actively happening. So she says now she's about to fast and bathe in the sea. She also recently remembered that this is not the first time she experienced things like this. Throughout her childhood, she had dealt with a lot of trauma, physically and spiritually. Trigger warning, but for example, there was unwanted touching from her own father. There was spiritual attempts to remove one of her ovaries. In her dreams, mind you, there was another dream where they attempted to put their demon fingers in her private parts. And mind you, she was a child. She said basically for a long time she felt dirty and guilty, but with going through everything and growing up, she also had to teach herself that none of this was her fault. Like, she didn't ask for any of this. All she was just born. Just needs to now take the liberty to, take the proper steps to protect herself. Because we can be born into a lot of things that we don't even know about, right? Parents, our great-grandparents, like, there's a lot that are affecting us that we think is just normal when it's not. That's why I always stress, like, for example, let's say you're with a man and he refuses to treat you the right way. And you swear up and down you're going to change him whole time. There's a whole spirit attached to him from generations and generations before him. You think you're going to be Captain Save-A-Ho and free him from a generational curse? No, you're just going to take yourself down with him. Anyway, that's the story, y'all. Don't forget to let me know what you were eating in the comments. Don't forget to grab your ebook to protect yourself from things like this. Don't forget to go over to my YouTube channel to watch my stories in long form. I actually want to make a video about that for you guys. Now I do. Anyway, I love you. Bye.
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. I had just turned old enough to start staying home by myself. and I was excited. I had been waiting for the moment I was able to feel just a little more grown up. I could watch whatever I wanted, eat whatever I wanted, and just have the house to myself. It was bliss. Until I had to stay by myself while I was sick. My parents, my brother, and my sister were going out to eat, and I was in no state to go with them, so my parents left me home alone. When they first left, everything was fine. Other than the way I was feeling, everything was as it should have been. So, I curled up on the couch in the living room with a blanket, turned on the TV, and tried to distract myself from how awful I was feeling. 30 minutes later, and one episode of whatever show I was watching down, I noticed it. A creak. Right above my head from where I was positioned on the couch. Now, right above the living room was my parents' bedroom, which I knew to be empty at the time because everyone was out. At first, I tried to ignore it, give myself the same excuses everyone does. The house was settling. The floors usually creak anyway, so this was the wind? But then I heard another creak, and another, and slowly I started to realize that the creaks weren't random. They were moving, one after another, across the room, like footsteps. I muted the TV, and to my horror was confirmed that someone or something was walking around upstairs. I sat there completely still and holding my breath. Then, a different sound. This sounded like someone rummaging through things. A drawer opening, something shifting, another floorboard creaking. I was so confused at this point. I vividly remember telling myself there's nobody upstairs. Nobody was home. It was just me. But something was making these sounds, and whatever it was in my parents' bedroom. Then I heard the footsteps again, and as I listened to them, I realized they were making their way toward the door to the bedroom. My parents' bedroom door was always partially open. They never completely shut it. And because our house had an open balcony overlooking the living room, I could actually see the upstairs hallway from downstairs. I got brave, and I decided to look. Slowly, I leaned around the corner of the living room and looked up. Their bedroom door was still cracked open, as I had expected it to be. I couldn't see anyone, but I could still hear the slow creaking of something moving toward the doorway. My heart started pounding. I was sure something was about to come out of that door as I was staring at it. I felt around on the couch and I picked up my phone. Clearly, someone was in the house with me that wasn't supposed to be there. I grabbed my phone, jumped off the couch, and ran toward the front door, shouting, "I'm calling the cops. If you don't leave right now, I'm going to my neighbor's house." Sure that would have deterred whoever was in there to leave, but then the bedroom door started moving. So painfully slow, it began to creak open. I swear I never heard that door creak so loudly in my life. But I didn't wait to see what came out of it. I flung open the front door and ran outside, straight to my neighbor's house, and knocked, trying to get someone to help. Nobody was home. At this point, I'm now standing outside, sick, terrified, and completely alone. I called my parents and I told them what was happening. They basically told me that I'm sure it's nothing. I was sick. My imagination is probably getting to me. And that they would be home in about 30 minutes. 30 minutes. I told myself that they must be right. It's the fever or something. I'm imagining it. So I stood outside for a while, regaining my courage, and then made my way back into the house. I walked toward the front door. I opened it and glanced upstairs, hoping everything would be normal and I could go back to laying on the couch. But when I looked up, the bedroom door was wide open. Almost immediately, I felt someone or something else was in the house with me. I wish I could explain it, but I can't. All I can say is that I knew for a fact that I wasn't alone. It was like I couldn't see anyone, but every instinct in my body was screaming that someone was standing up there, right in the middle of that balcony, watching me. I stared up at the hallway. I said, less confidently than I'd like to admit, "Who's up there?" And the second I said it, something moved. Fast. Whatever had been standing in that hallway suddenly ran. It disappeared back into my parents' bedroom, and I watched, terrified, as the door slammed shut hard. I couldn't move. I stood there in disbelief as the sound of footsteps running through the bedroom echoed in the house, and I followed them with my ears. They ran straight toward the bathroom. And then, slam, the bathroom door was thrown closed. All I could do at that moment was just stand there, shaking. I felt like I was going to throw up. I still had 30 minutes before my parents came home. I fished my phone out of my pocket and I called them again. And again, we're finishing up. We'll be home soon. Just relax. Stay outside if you need to. So I turned around and walked back outside. The only thing giving me comfort in that moment was our 2 guard dogs out back. If someone actually was in the house, they would find them. So I walked around back, opened the back door, and let the dogs in. They took off running through the house. They ran through the downstairs room, sniffing everything, before making their way to the 2nd level. I stayed at the bottom of the stairs looking up, completely prepared to hear my dogs growling or trying to get into my parents' room. Nothing. No barking, no growling. They just roamed around. For a second, I thought maybe I really had just imagined everything. It must have been just the fever. The dogs turned the corner at the top of the stairs and stopped. Completely. Both of them were staring towards my brother's bedroom. Maybe I wasn't imagining anything after all. I walked up the stairs. The dogs still weren't moving. Their hair was standing straight up, and they were growling now. I didn't want to go any further, but I needed to know what they were looking at. If there was actually a person in the house, I needed to know. I took 2 more steps. I was almost high enough to see inside my brother's room, and then I heard it. A growl. A growl that wasn't coming from my dogs. This one was an answer. It was deeper and louder, and one of my dogs immediately whimpered. And then the other reacted like something had physically hit her, and before I could even process what was happening, both dogs took off, tail between their legs, and down the stairs as fast as they could. Just as I was trying to figure out what had just happened, another loud slam. I spun around to see my brother's bedroom door, now shut. That's when I completely lost it. I turned around and ran straight outside with my dogs and stayed in the backyard until my parents came home. When I finally told them everything that happened, they still didn't believe me, but my dad did go inside and search the entire house and found nothing. There was no explanation for what happened there. And I wish I could say that after that day, it was just a one-off thing, but the activity only continued, and over time, it actually got worse. I've grown up since and moved out of that house, but even now, when I visit, I still catch moments when I still feel it. The feeling like I'm just not alone.
I recently had somebody go through my things while I was staying at a shared Airbnb. I was in a home with a family. How I know they went through my things is because they did something very specific to many very specific garments that I had, and this is what happened. And none of the reviews prior to me staying there, when I booked it, none of the reviews gave a warning about this. I'm staying in an extra room in this family's home, but the listing doesn't say anything about their adult son, but that their adult son would be in the room next to me. Now, they did give me one of those janky like interior locks for the door, but who cares? And I did lock it. But the last day that I was there, I came back. And I will preface this by saying they were very nice. Their son was extremely awkward, and I passed him in the hallway. He threw his whole body against the wall and tried to make himself, even though he was a larger individual, he tried to make himself as flat as possible, and he just kind of looked away. His body language and behavior was really awkward. All that to say, I get back the last day and I'm packing up my stuff and making sure I have everything. One thing I've never done in my life since I started wearing bras, never ever in my life have I ever folded one. I've never folded one. I take them off and I just wad them up and put them wherever. I never take the time to take them off, relatch them, fold them. I never do that. I'm packing my stuff and I find that somebody has taken not only my bras, but my other undergarments, and they have folded them all perfectly. They took my bras and they latched them, and as immaculate as you could possibly imagine, they were all folded perfectly in a perfect little stack. I immediately called my husband, and he's like, gross. He's like, don't touch. He's like, don't put any of that, like, leave the one, don't put any of those on. He's like, that is disgusting. He's like, who knows what they did to your stuff? And he goes, who do you think it was? And I said, well, I guess it could be any of the three of them. Or I don't know if they have other people that come in there. I don't know. It's a shared space, but I would assume it's this, like, their adult son that's like super awkward. So then I go and I read the reviews, and one woman who stayed there right before me gave him a 1-star review and said that it was the most unsettling Airbnb that she had ever been in, and that something was off and she didn't feel right and she had to get out of there. Another man said the same thing. He said that the adult son, he said he would have given him 5 stars, but there was something about the adult son that made him feel awkward, and that he was really rude, and that, like, same thing. So anyway, my stuff had been gone through, and it geeked me out. It totally just geeked me out. I've never had that happen. And I know for a fact, I've never folded anything that perfectly, and I've never folded my bras ever in my life. I just don't. And it was as if, like I said to my husband, I said, I feel like that was the whole, like, who knows what they did to my stuff, or they did to my sleeping area. Who knows what they did? But I felt like that was the whole, like, and I'm going to let you know I did it. That's the creepy factor of it. Like, they didn't want to hide that they did. Like, I would have never known if they had just put it back how they found it. But I feel like taking that extra step to make sure that that makes it extra creepy. Like, hey, like, I'm a super creep. Like, I want to make you uncomfortable. I want to know that I've made you uncomfortable. I've been staying in Airbnbs for about 16 years, since before anybody knew what they were, because I've been traveling a long time and I try to stay on the cheap. So I've seen some things. And this was one that made me pretty uncomfortable, because I felt like it was especially creepy. So I was like, how do I communicate this? Like, I want to be very delicate, because she was very clear when I got there. She's like, no, you're going to be I had been in the listing. It said that I would have my own bathroom and so on and so forth. And I didn't. I had to share a bathroom with this grown kid of theirs. And that it always smelled sour when it was gross. And another thing is, if you are a shared space Airbnb, one thing that I would recommend is don't ever put the guests' towels above the toilet, especially if the toilet's going to be used by other people. That is the most revolting thing to me. Like, that poop plume, just, it goes everywhere. And if you look it up, it can make people sick. It's gross. So she was like, and here's your towels. I bring my own towels for that reason. Every time I stay at an Airbnb, I bring my own towels, and it's for that reason. And there was this beautiful shelf in my room with nothing on it. They could have easily been stored there. Why do they have to be above the toilet where your icky son takes poos? I don't want that. And he never, ever, 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 ever put the lid down. Like, it just gross. My husband's like, are you going to tell her? Are you going to tell her that her son's, I was like, she probably knows, because, like, in the reviews, she was like, this is a temporary situation. He needed immediate housing, blah, blah, blah. But there was also another thing, like, he didn't look anything like them. And her husband had an interesting profession for a nonprofit where he found unhoused people homes. And I got the vibe that maybe she was lying about him being, because she was so, like, adamant that he's our son. But then there were, like, pictures, and he wasn't in any of the pictures. There was another guy in the pictures, but he wasn't in any of the family pictures. So I think this was like a stranger. If you have someone in your house that you can't vouch for very well, probably then don't have it as an Airbnb at that time. I'm wondering if she was just lying about him, who he really was, and how he was, why he was there. But I'll never know. But I did tell her. I told her what happened. I wrote her a message and I said, hey, look, I had this experience. I was very specific, and I told her about, like, how they were. I said, I didn't do this. This is what happened. Somebody went through my things. You will not convince me that they didn't. And she's like, well, I don't know how they would have gotten your room. Your room was locked. And I was like, it's your home. It's an interior door. I'm not an idiot. Like, of course somebody else can come in there. And plus, do you know how easy it is to pick one of those doors? It's so easy, especially if you're somebody who wants to get into a room with other people's stuff. That's a really easy skill set to acquire. Super easy. So she was being a little bit defensive, and she apologized that I had that experience or whatever. And that was super gross. And I felt like whoever did that wanted me to know that they had done it. My husband was like, you know, he put them on. Oh, he had them on. He had them on. He had to have had them on. Gross.
Let me just start this by saying I've lived in the Appalachian Mountains my whole life, and I've experienced a lot of weird, unsettling, unexplainable things, if you will. So anyways, the story all begins with my dog Beans and how he made this low growl that I've never, ever, ever heard from him before. And I mean, like, scary, like, really defensive. I've never heard it, nothing like it before. He's a border collie German shepherd, so he's got like a little bit of protection in him, you know what I mean? He's got that instinct, but nothing I had ever heard before like this sound. Not even to mention, he literally never growls anyway, so this was already like a red flag that he was growling. Like, it honestly sounded like he was getting ready to fight for his life or fight for my life or something. I took him out around like 11 p.m. and he would not leave my side. So I noticed that my workshop door was open, so I walked over to close it, right? And he was right by my side the entire time, like glued to me. He also just kept trying to get in between my legs while he was still growling. All of his hackles and all of his hair was standing up on the back of his neck and all straight down his back like some kind of freaking feral animal, I don't know. So I closed my workshop door, and right as I do so, all hell breaks loose out in the woods. I shit you not, guys, it sounded like 50 full-grown men just broke out in sprint out in the middle of the woods. And it sounded like they were ripping through the woods. 50 full-grown men, or like just some big mob, like a big mob of people. Trees were shaking, branches were falling. You could feel the thunderous like thumps of the fucking ground shaking. We get back in the house before I shit my freaking pants, and we grab my husband's pistol/mag light so I can look outside and see what the fuck is out there. So when Beanie and I get back outside to investigate and see what the fuck's going on out there, we are literally surrounded by a bunch of mumbling voices. The sound was coming from everywhere. It sounded like Bose speakers were all around everywhere of just people mumbling, and I was flashing lights around. I couldn't see anybody anywhere, but the sound was everywhere. I know it wasn't some kind of animal because I could make out what sounded close to words, but it wasn't actual words. Or like it was just so jumbled and weird that I couldn't actually make out what it sounded like, but it did sound like a word that I would know. I almost immediately felt sick when I heard all of this, and it felt like I got flu symptoms right then and there. Back inside the house, it sounded like people were walking around my house all night long. All of my windows were creaking, at least the ones in my bedroom where I was. You could clearly hear the sound of shoes crunching on gravel around outside. I was so terrified I couldn't even fall asleep, which is unusual for me because even in like the scariest of situations, I have been able to still fall asleep. But that night, the air just felt thick and evil. That's honestly the only way I can explain it. Like, imagine a soaking wet quilt being thrown over top of you and having to sleep under it all night. That's how I felt. Just that like weird, icky, gross, uncomfortable, like something's wrong here feeling. To this day, I have absolutely no explanation as to what that could have been. I truly don't know.
This is one of the biggest medical disasters in history. In the early 1970s, a company was selling an IUD called the Delcon Shield, and roughly 2.5 million women in America used it. But what women didn't know is that this device had a flaw, a deadly one. The problem was a string. IUD fact. IUDs have a string so that you can eventually remove it, but they have a single filament. But the Delcon Shield used a braided multi-filament string sheathed in nylon. And that was the problem, because that braided filament could absorb bacteria into the uterus, which is otherwise sterile. So what was the result? Well, the result was severe pelvic inflammatory disease, infertility, septic miscarriages in women who got pregnant when they shouldn't have, and some women died. When women reported it, the doctors blamed the women and told them that they had brought on the infection themselves, going so far as to victim blame and question their sexual history, and doctors telling them that their complaints were exaggerated. The pattern is one we've seen many times before. Internal documents later showed up in litigation that expressed concerns pretty early on about the wicking, but the product still stayed on the market. It was eventually withdrawn from US markets in 1974, and the company filed bankruptcy in 1985. The Delcon Shield is also a direct reason why the FDA has gained real authority over medical devices today. Before this, a device could go to market with way less scrutiny than a drug. But unfortunately, Thousands upon thousands of women were blamed and had to absorb the cost over a braid.
You have to understand that when you go into the Appalachian Mountains, you are entering into another realm. And there is a set of unspoken rules that you must follow. Rule number 1, if you hear something calling your name, right, you didn't. There is nothing there. And you should not respond. Do not say hello. Do not say, who is it? Just run away. Because something is trying to gain permission. And by you acknowledging it, you are allowing it to come after you. If you hear screams in the mountains, right, you didn't. And do not go towards the direction of the screams to try and help. Because once again, something is trying to lure you. If you see people, you don't. If you hear crying, you're not hearing it. Do not respond to this at all because you are giving permission to whatever is in those woods to come after you. Now, if you are to go camping in the Appalachian Mountains, right, you have to remember at night, you must keep a fire going at all times. And it's not for warmth. It's not for cooking. It's to keep you safe. And if you are going to camp in a tent, make sure when you go into that tent, it is sealed up. There are no holes. There are no cracks. And if you hear any kind of screaming, yelling, or anyone calling your name, do not respond. Do not go to sleep. And if something wakes you up, stay alert. And once again, do not respond. Now, it's very important when you are walking through the Appalachian Mountains, if you come across a deer carcass, do not touch it. Do not stare at it. Walk away. Ignore it. Because this is something, once again, trying to lure you into the woods. Now, if it comes to the point that something is chasing you and it gets you, and there is no escape, fight. Fight as hard as you can, whether it's a person, an animal. If it's something else, though, and you know what I'm talking about, well, you just let it get you, right? Because at that point, there's nothing you can do. And there's an old saying, you go into the Appalachian Mountains with 2 bullets, right? You fire the first one at something that isn't a person, that isn't an animal. And if it doesn't run away, you know what to do with the second one.
Want to start streaming today? Tap the Go Live link below to test it now.
I befriended my husband's mistress. Dark hair, blue eyes, average height, curvy. I mean, I wasn't surprised that's what she looked like since that's always been my husband's type. I mean, I could admit she was gorgeous. I mean, when I first spotted her on the camera footage, she even took my breath away. So, yeah, I could understand why my husband had an attraction to her, but I couldn't understand what she offered that I didn't. I already had an inkling that my husband was having an affair. His attentiveness started dwindling. He stopped giving me kisses goodbye, and now it's like he doesn't even want to touch me. So I hid a camera in his car and left for a weekend trip. But not even an hour after I left, I saw him pull up to an apartment, and there she was, greeting him at the door. Sure, she was breathtakingly beautiful, but again, what did she offer that I didn't? Sure, I had a wild phase in college, but I cleaned up my act, you know? Now I tidy up the house while he's at work, I cook dinner every night, I give him all the affection that he ever asked for. It wasn't hard to find. I mean, I only had to scroll halfway through my husband's Facebook friends list to find her. Amanda Day. She's 30 years old, born and raised in California, works as a real estate agent, so seems to make good money. No kids and 2 dogs. She attends spin classes on the weekends, which explains her perfect figure, and likes to go to wine tastings with friends. 2 weeks later, I found myself in one of her spin classes. My curiosity got the best of me, okay? But I needed to know what made her so different from me. You know, I needed to know what my husband saw in her. She was frustratingly friendly, annoyingly charming, and even more beautiful in person. We hit it off immediately. I don't even know what my end game was, okay? I mean, over the next few weeks, I'd go to classes with her, and we'd get lunch after. Then she started inviting me over for Friday night girls' nights. We just spent the evening on our couch giggling and gossiping, and it went on like this for months. Finally, I decided to confront my husband. That night at dinner, he gulped down his wine, and I waited, and finally said, "You don't look like you're feeling so well, dear." And then 2 hours later, he was finally awake, and I pressed my to his cheek. I said, "Don't lie. I know about your mistress." He laughed and said, "What are you gonna do? Kill me if I don't break up with her?" I said, "No, I don't want you anymore." He said, "Great, leave me then so I can be with her." That's the thing. I need you out of the picture. Thought about those girls' nights with her, the way that her breath caught when I accidentally brushed up against her, or the way that she looked at me with a hint of longing in her gaze. So I clarified, I don't want you anymore. I want her.
Buckle up because these pictures are gonna freak you the out, especially the first one. A woman named Amanda Pitt was so spooked by a ghostly image on her security camera that she couldn't go back to sleep, and her family has considered moving to a new home. Amanda woke up when she heard heavy footsteps in her home at 3:40 a.m. on October 21st. When she looked at the security camera, she saw what appeared to be a ghostly figure standing in the doorway of her kitchen. She woke her husband up and sent him downstairs to confront the intruder, only to find no one in the home and no sign of a break-in. According to Amanda, strange things would happen inside of their home, and the people who lived there before them didn't live there for very long. This video was taken back in 2019 in a nursing home that I worked at. One of the residents asked me to record her while she blessed one of the most haunted rooms in the facility. Residents had sudden episodes or would even pass away when staying in this room. Even the staff would get chills walking past it, and because of that, nobody is placed in that room anymore. While I was recording one of the residents praying over the room, this happened. I took a picture of my new tattoos to show my cousin. About a week later, I went looking through my photos and noticed something in the background of this one. I can see what looks like a rotting face behind my shoulder, coming from inside my closet. Nothing was in my closet. I was in the process of moving at the time.
Let's read a scary Reddit story. This story takes place in New Brunswick, Canada, and it is unlike anything else that I've ever read. It is super terrifying, so get ready. I want to start this retelling of my experience off by stating that I am an Indigenous woman and have always been a very spiritual person who believes in many things. There was also no alcohol, drugs, or any mind-altering substances present or used during this experience. I've never retold this story online, but I want to tonight. When I was about 14 years old, in 2014, I was staying the night with a couple of friends. If I recall correctly, this was on a Sunday night and it was in the summer. We lived in a populated city in New Brunswick, Canada, and the neighborhood we lived in was relatively quiet and normal. There wasn't much woods around where this experience occurred, but there was a beach nearby and a small wooded area surrounding the beach. Around 11 o'clock at night, one of my friends and I decided that we wanted snacks, and the two of us ventured out to the convenience store a couple blocks away. It was about a 5 to 7 minute walk, while the rest of our friends stayed home and waited for us to return. My friend and I chit-chatted on our walk to the convenience store that we had visited many times before. When we arrived there, we went up a few steps and realized it was closed, so we stepped down and stood on the sidewalk for a second, trying to figure out where we could go to get our snacks. While we were standing there, an old rickety car, maybe an old Toyota, I really don't know, with an odd-looking driver pulled onto the street in front of us. Come to think of it, I don't even know where this car came from. Maybe I just don't recall, or maybe this car and man came out of thin air. The driver had his driver's window down and was alone in the vehicle. My friend and I stood there and looked at him for a moment as he drove by us slowly. He stared at us and we stared at him. He was a skinny, pale-faced man who looked like someone who was on drugs. I don't recall him having any hair, so I guess he was bald. Side by side, we watched his face as he continued to slowly drive his car further away from us down the street. He didn't take his eyes off of us, and we didn't take ours off of him. Our conversation had halted as soon as this event started, and we just stood in silence, watching. Even as he drove further away, he was still looking back at us, and he had this weird grin on his sunken face. The grin wasn't the horrifying part though. The horrifying part was that his neck seemed to stretch out of the car window and wrap around it to look behind him as he continued to drive off slowly, while keeping his gaze fixated on us, as if we were prey. At that moment, I didn't know what my friend was thinking, but something inside of me, or maybe outside of me, shoved me into the street and told me to run. I grabbed my friend's arms and drug her across the street with me as my gut filled with a horrific feeling and my adrenaline spiked. As soon as we booked it across the street, the driver halted his car to a stop and screeched his tires as he quickly backed up to be in direct eye line of our new position across the street. We were hiding in a bush, fumbling our cell phones, trying to dial 911. Something was not right, and both of us were absolutely petrified. The light on our phone screens were bright, and we heard the car door slam. He has gotten out of his car and was coming towards our position. We immediately darted from our hiding spot and ran as fast as we could through people's backyards. I lost one of my shoes during this sprint. We banged on someone's door. An older lady answered and scolded us, shooing us away because of how late it was. She didn't seem to care that we were frantic and afraid and in danger. She was angry that she was disturbed. We weren't going to stand there on her steps and wait for this man to catch up to us, so I grabbed my friend and we booked it down the lady's steps and into another neighbor's yard, where their garage was open. Inside the garage was a car. My friend and I hid behind the car, between the car and the back of the garage, and we waited. My friend was crying and whimpering, and I covered her mouth and held her. I was petrified and shaking, but I was quiet because I knew I had to be, and I knew I had to make her be quiet. I had never had a feeling of being prey or being in the sights of being killed, but this was the one time in my life, and still is, that I had these feelings. I am grateful about how I reacted and how I was able to protect both myself and my friend. We stayed behind that car for a while. It felt like eternity. We didn't know when to leave. We crouched and stayed still and quiet. When time went by and we didn't hear anything, we dialed 911 and told them what happened. When we got off the phone and thought the coast was clear, we snuck out of the garage, looked around to see if anyone or anything was near, and ran as fast as we could back to our friend's house. We were winded when we arrived back and we were eager to get in. We banged on her door because she had locked it behind us and didn't think we would need an emergent entrance on our return. The police searched the area and found nothing. Said they found no one that matched our description and no vehicles that matched our description either. The entire night, the two of us were shaken up. We both cried hysterically when we were safe inside and able to decompress. I couldn't sleep for weeks because I could not get that man's face out of my head. Whenever I tell this story to someone, I get jittery and teary-eyed out of adrenaline and fear. It still haunts me to this day. Years after that, in maybe 2021 or around that year, I dated a native man in my area and told him about the experience. He listened intently, and when I finished, he coldly said to me, "You know what that was, right?" I told him, no. He told me it was a skinwalker. I had heard of the legends and the history of them, and I was baffled that the thought had never occurred to me. When he told me that, I sank into my seat and felt shook in the knowing of what that was. I am 26 now and haven't had any experiences like that since, nor have I seen anyone who resembles that man. I also haven't spoken to the friend who was with me for years, but I do wonder if she still thinks about that night. I feel truly lucky to have survived that, and I believe that that experience has been my only near-death experience. There's a feeling you get when you know you're about to die or your life is being threatened, and that is what I felt that night. A commenter on this post on Reddit asked, "I don't want to bring back bad memories, but when you said he turned around with his neck, how did it look?" And the OP said, "It genuinely looked as though he was stretching his head and neck out of the window like a snake. He looked directly backwards with his neck extended. It curled out the window and backwards to face us as he drove further. The further he went, the more he stuck his head out and back. It was at that moment that I realized we were in danger. Human bodies do not work like that." This story truly sent chills down my spine, especially the original poster's comment explaining how this man twisted their neck out of the window and basically made a U with their neck and stared back at these girls. Have you ever had any experience with some sort of shapeshifter or person that doesn't really look like a person? If you or anyone you know have any paranormal encounters that you would like to share, please send them to me because I would love to read them on here. Have a great day. Bye.
This story is about a new mom who had to deal with a haunted house. Welcome to the Creepy Cozy Cottage, where creepy and cozy meet. So grab a plushie and get cozy. When I was 18 years old, I was a brand new mom, knee-deep in diapers and breast milk, and severely lacking on sleep. My baby daddy, now husband, and I had just signed a lease on our first home. tiny town in North Texas. The town was so small that there was just one flashing red traffic light, 2 gas stations, and 1 cop who only worked 2 nights a week. The population was well under 1,000. Our house was adorable. Pink brick, big backyard, 2 bedrooms, and 1 bathroom. Perfect for a young family. Shortly after moving in, strange things began to happen, and it didn't take long for us to realize we weren't the only ones in the house. The first incident occurred while my husband was home alone with the baby. He was sitting on the couch in the living room when he saw the light, misty shape of a woman pacing in the kitchen. He couldn't make out her face, but he could tell it was definitely a woman wearing a long dress. In the following weeks and months, it seemed like the activity really picked up and was focused in on our daughter's room. Every single day I went to get my daughter out of her crib, pictures that were hung on her wall would be on the floor. The first couple of times I chalked it up to not having enough thumbtacks holding the large painted canvases up. But even after reinforcing each painting, I'd still come to find them all on the floor. At the time, my daughter was so young, there was no way she could have knocked them down, and my husband definitely wouldn't have intentionally messed up her room like that. Being a new mama bear, this activity really made me angry. The next major incident occurred when my sister and her boyfriend spent the night at our house. At the end of a long night of board games, they made a pallet of pillows and blankets on the floor in the living room, and my husband and I retired to our bedroom. The way our house was set up, the living room, kitchen, and dining room were all in the front of the house. The way our house was set up, the living room, kitchen, and dining room were in the front of the house. Then there was a long hallway leading to the bathroom and the 2 bedrooms, which sat directly across from each other at the end of the hallway. The next morning, my sister and her boyfriend looked extremely tired. We asked how they slept, and my sister said, "We kept waking up every time you went to the bathroom." Confused, I looked at my husband. "I didn't go to the bathroom last night. Did you?" My sister explained that they heard our bedroom door open and close. Then, after a short pause, the bathroom door open and close. A couple minutes later, they'd hear the bathroom door open and close, and then the bedroom door again. As if someone was leaving the bedroom, going to the bathroom, then coming back to bed. They heard this sequence at least 3 times that night. I was breastfeeding my 6-month-old at the time and never closed our bedroom door ever. I always left it open in case the baby woke up at night. Our rooms were arranged so that I could sit up in bed and see across the hall into her room. Needless to say, this experience had us thoroughly shook. We started losing sleep, worried that every little sound was something or someone in the house. I began to feel like I was going crazy. The anxiety consumed my thoughts day and night. Then one night I woke up in the middle of the night once again. I sat up in bed and looked toward the hallway to peer in the baby's room. Instead of seeing the warm yellow glow of her nightlight, there was a black shape of a man. Opaque, impenetrable black. And he was standing near the foot of the bed, blocking the glow of the nightlight. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, with broad shoulders. I couldn't see any of his features, as he was solid black, but I got the sense that he was wearing a blazer or suit jacket, which caused his shoulders to look square. Strangely, when I saw him, I didn't feel scared. He didn't feel threatening or spooky like the woman did. In fact, when I realized what I was seeing, I simply rolled over and went back to sleep. The next morning, I described the night's event to my husband, and we agreed to have the house blessed, just in case. After that, the activity stopped. We never had another experience again. Let me know what you think, and if you have any scary stories of your own you'd like me to read, just send me a DM.
Hello, my icon legend queens. Welcome back to another Jessie Paranormal video. If you like everything to do with the paranormal, give me a like, follow, and share, because that's what I like as well. Moving to England at 25, my partner and I decided that I should stay home and rack up some money. Quite rough time for us. And stuff started happening in my room that truly creeped me out. At first it was sounds like steps around my bed, stuff falling in my closet, and my TV always turning static. The only thing was, my dad's house since my parents' divorce, built in 2016, and the TV that I had since childhood, it reminded me of stuff happening throughout my childhood, including things that actually caused me harm. This was waking up with scratches. A TV fell on me when I was 6. For all you young ones, the TV weighed like 80 pounds, and I wasn't able to move it by myself. I suddenly got freaked out. One night I woke up and had to go to the toilet. I woke up instantly feeling alert, which is unusual. I couldn't move out of fear, and I finally told myself that I was being silly and to just go. When grabbing my phone off the bedside table and grasped my wrist, and it was a woman covered in black muck with the most horrible face screaming at me. A face flew at me. Nothing. I woke up again and nothing but pain in my wrist, a red mark visible the next day. I just continued on. My now husband came to save the relationship and stayed with me and my dad for a couple of months. And 3 nights in, he woke up and I woke up and looked at him and he frantically mumbled and fidgeted around. Massively sweaty. Just likes to sit at a good -10 Celsius. He doesn't dream. I tried poking him softly, saying it's okay. Wake up, and he jolted awake, screaming. What he then said he has never ever wanted to talk about to this day. He said he woke up needing to go to the bathroom, then when he went to the bedroom door, it started shaking and then slamming out of its hinges. He went to open the door thinking it must have been my dad. The door flies open, this woman in black screaming in his face, and then he woke up. I went out the next day and got sage. Smudged the house in it before my dad got home from work several times. I believed that it was that was it and it was done. Well, was the paranormal. And there wasn't another way to explain what happened, since I didn't tell my partner about my dream or the weird things that were happening to me. We visited last summer in 2025, and one night, out of the 7 we stayed at my dad's, I woke up alert and just thought it was going a bit hard for my hometown friends the night before. So I kind of laughed it off and went to scroll on Instagram. I scrolled, then I tried to go back to sleep when I heard a sound coming from the closet. I looked in the closet and the room had a blackout curtains. Nothing in there but a bed, a small TV mounted on the wall, and a small dresser and closet, and board games too on the top. One light in the room, a standby light on the TV. Something stepped into the glow in the standby light slowly as if they walked up. I stared in disbelief, then fanning my arms around in the bed to make sure it wasn't the blanket. Somehow on my husband's legs, it didn't flinch. After a 3-minute stare off, that's what I assumed, as that's what it felt. It stepped back from the light, nothing happened. I just felt like there was a message, like that it was still here. I believe in the paranormal now and I never want to mess with this, and I don't want to mess with it at all.
An abandoned lighthouse began flashing its lights again after being shut down for 47 years. The problem? There was no electricity, and every ship that answered the signal disappeared. Welcome to the Midnight Sesh. We have had some flavors. Now let's get into the story. The lighthouse sat on a remote island nearly 20 miles from the coast. It had been abandoned in 1972 after its keeper vanished without a trace. The building was eventually locked up and forgotten until one night a fishing crew reported seeing the light turn on. The Coast Guard checked the lighthouse. There was no power connected to the island, but the light kept flashing. A nearby cargo ship noticed it too. The captain assumed it was a distress signal. He changed course towards the island. 20 minutes later, the ship disappeared from radar. The Coast Guard launched a search. They found the lighthouse still flashing. Inside, everything was covered in dust, except for the staircase. There were wet footprints leading from the entrance all the way to the lantern room. The footprints were barefoot, and they stopped directly beneath the light. Investigators searched the building. At the top of the lighthouse, they found the old radio still connected. It suddenly turned on. Static filled the room, then a voice came through. The Coast Guard operator recognized it immediately. It was the captain of the missing cargo ship. He was whispering, "We're back." The operator asked where they were. The captain answered, "Inside the light." Then the transmission ended. The lighthouse went dark. For almost a year, nothing happened. Then the light turned on again. This time, investigators noticed something different. The signal wasn't pointing towards the ocean. It was pointing inland, toward the mainland. People living along the coast began reporting strange lights appearing in their windows at night. Always 3 flashes. And then exactly 1 minute later, someone would knock on their front door. Nobody ever opened it until one family did. Their neighbor heard screaming and called the police. When officers arrived, the house was empty. The family was gone, but every window in the house was glowing. The lighthouse was demolished shortly afterward, but 6 months later, ships began reporting the same signal, except now it wasn't coming from the island. It was coming from somewhere beneath the ocean. And according to the last recorded transmission, the lighthouse wasn't calling ships towards it. It was calling something else towards us. I know I'm a water sign and all that, but I honestly am terrified of the fucking ocean and boats. I don't ever want to go on a cruise. I don't want to be out at sea. Let me know your thoughts down below. Go ahead and like, follow, comment, and share. I love you as always. Bye.
People think if someone gets into your home while you're asleep, they will feel it immediately. That's a mistake. Here's what we never think about. You shift in your sleep dozens of times every night. your brain filters those movements automatically, which means a slight change in the weight distribution of your mattress at 3 a.m. does not wake you up the way it should. Your brain files it under normal, turns it off, and by the time you register that the weight on the far side of your bed is not where it was when you fell asleep, whatever created it has already been there long enough to understand your sleep pattern. First, if you wake up and your mattress feels different from how it did when you fell asleep, do not move immediately. Most people can sit up. Instead, stay completely still and breathe normally. If the weight shifts in response to your breathing, do not make another sound, because people who ignore this said the same thing later. The weight adjusted every time their breathing changed, not randomly, in response. It's something on the other side of the mattress was listening to them the same way they were trying to listen for it. Second, do not reach for the lamp on the side closest to where the weight feels different. People who survive situations like this all realize one thing afterwards. Reaching towards it to whatever was there exactly where your hand was in the dark. Here's the part that skips people later. If you lie completely still and the weight does not move and the breathing in the room is not yours and you cannot tell where in the room it is coming from, it is not coming from across the room. It is coming from the same mattress you are lying on, and it has been there ever since before you woke up.
Bro, what's going on around?
You got your late night snack. This is Last Thread Before Bed, episode 42. This is a little series where I read scary stories from Reddit before I go to bed, and I try not to get nightmares. So boom, let's get into it. Tonight's story is on the subreddit Real Life Scary. This first story looks relatively short, so I'll do 2 stories. So this first one is called The Shiloh Inn Hotel, Salt Lake City, Utah, from user Zergreep. At the time, I was 19 and volunteering / living in a homeless shelter with my girlfriend. Since guys and girls didn't share rooms, we decided to find a hotel nearby for the weekend. All was great. We checked in and put our stuff away. That afternoon, we hung out, used the pool, and went to dinner. Once we got back into our room, it was blatantly obvious someone had been inside while we were gone. There were 4 to 6 handprints on the window, as clear as day. This window covered almost the entire outer wall of the building, and it was impossible that we didn't notice them when we initially entered the room. The prints were small and clearly children. We were both quite confused and uneasy for a bit, but then we both just shrugged it off. Later, I talked to the guy at the front desk, and he gave me the spiel of how the hotel was haunted. Years ago, a woman's husband committed and convinced her to do the same. The lady from one of the top floor rooms threw all of her children, sounded like at least 3, over the ledge and then jumped herself. I can't remember what floor it was, but we were near the top. Also, a child or lady's voice could be heard by the pool when no one was there. And a pinball machine would play itself, although nothing unordinary happened while we were in these areas. A quick Google search today came up with pretty much the same story, except it had been remodeled and changed into a Holiday Inn since 2014. As an afterthought, I heard kids playing in the hallways, but never actually saw any. Finding those handprints was the most unusual feeling and unexplained experience I've ever had. That was a good one. That was short, sweet, and to the point. I like to build a little bit of suspense, but also I like the stories that are just cut and dry. This story is called Man's Best Friend, from Poketh the Moketh 2. This is on the same thread. One night my doggies, aka Big Husky Terrier mixes, had to go to the restroom. My dad hadn't fixed the fence yet, so there was a big hole in the fence, with lead to my neighbor's backyard, whom happened to be afraid of dogs. Because of her fear, I had to go out there with them, just to be sure they didn't wander into her yard. Well, it was cold and I was missing my favorite show, The Simpsons. So I decided to just stay inside for once. After Homer got fired from this acting job, another Simpsons reference, I realized the dogs were still outside. Just as I had my hand on the doorknob to go outside, I hear a bark. Not from the backyard, but from the front yard. I looked behind me and you'll never guess what happened next. My dogs were on the front walkway. And as soon as I saw them, I saw my other neighbor walking towards my house. I opened the door to greet her, but the look on her face said she was worried. She told me that she saw someone being chased out of my backyard by my dogs. I told her she must have been mistaken because, for one, my gate was locked, and 2, I didn't hear anything. We looked around the back and found the lock on the ground. I guess the TV was too loud. I realized why dogs are man's best friend.
This wasn't paranormal, it wasn't something super crazy, but just a real life experience that truly can happen to anybody. I feel like these kinds of stories also keep this fresh because not every single story has to be a ghost story or a paranormal story. Let me know your thoughts and follow for more scary stories.